I'm Kim Anderson. I'm a professor in chemical and materials engineering, and I've been here about 26 years. Yes, so I did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University in chemical engineering, and it was like an actual joint appointment where we did chemical engineering and biomedical engineering. My plan to go to graduate school was a last-minute decision. I thought I was going to be medical school bound, and I got my degree in chemical engineering, and then was going to go to medical school. And then I met my advisor at Carnegie Mellon, who was doing biotype research, so I decided to go in that direction. So, I was in a program where I had to go through the traditional chemical engineering courses, which, I will have to admit that I didn't enjoy those. I was more interested in the research and really got into the bioengineering research. I think it was a very pleasant experience. I mean, it was tough, it was challenging. It was especially challenging for me because it had been high school since I had had a biology course. And so getting into research right away with bio, I had to learn a lot of the jargon, and terminology and things like that. So we met probably about weekly, and I would recommend, that. I think you need to stay engaged with your advisor.
Okay, great.
So I think there's some schools that you go to where you don't have that option. Some of the more Ivy League, high-powered schools, the advisors are off, a lot and out of town. But I think some place where at UK you have that option, to meet with your advisor often and be engaged. I encourage my students to come to my office whenever they have a question or want to discuss something. But yes, you don't want to walk in every single time you have a question and expect the advisor to work it out. You want, to think through your problems yourself. Advisors, when you walk in and you have a problem or a question, one thing that the advisor really likes to hear is that you've thought it out. You may have some of your own ideas. You don't want to walk in and just say, I don't know how to do this. What should I do? So. What I just said, you don't. So, if a student walks in, there's a couple things advisors don't want to hear. So I meet with my students on a weekly basis. They provide a progress report where they kind of outline what they did for the week, provide the results, and then what they plan on doing the following week. So I'm actively engaged. So we'll sit down, and that progress report is really a guide for our discussion. The first thing the advisor doesn't like is when you walk in and say, didn't have time for research this week, because you're supposed to be doing research. And then the other thing is, again, I've got this problem, tell me how to solve it. Or, what do I do next? Advisors would rather hear you say, here is what I think I should do next, how should I do it? Or what do you think? So. I mean, for those things, you just talk to your advisor. And I've had students who have had personal issues where you say, well, take some time off. I've had students who have been pregnant, and have had babies. And what we do is we try, I don't know if it's legal, but what we do here is we say, okay, go home, spend time with your child. At that point, you can spend some time writing. You can be reading research articles. You don't have to be, in the lab. So what we do at least with the graduate students, is we do try to tell them that before they start a research project, to outline a paper beforehand. So what you do is you sit down and you say, okay, here's what, our goal is, at least in engineering, is to get a publication out of your research. So you actually outline that publication first. So you can actually sit down and write a whole introduction before you even start research, okay, and understand why you're doing this research and the significance and the objectives. Then you can probably write the experimental procedures, although those may change depending on how the research comes out, and then actually sit down and say, okay, here are the figures I want to put in my paper. Here are the results that I need, and actually even do a sketch of what you think the results should look like, and then go in and do the research. Oh, it's very important, because you don't want, and I think that's when I say, trying to work out a paper in a publication before you do the research, that's setting your goals, because you're saying, okay, here's what I want to accomplish. It's very, very important, because if you don't, you're going to be spinning your wheels, and if you want to get out in a timely manner, then you do have to have your goals set. From the time you come in as a graduate student and go through all your courses, at least in chemical engineering, and I think most disciplines, you're looking at about 4 to 4.5 years. I think it's harder at the beginning because you're taking courses and then you're just getting into your research. So a lot of the students have a hard time with that first year because it's so much like undergrad because you're taking courses. What we try to tell those students is once you get through those courses, it's almost like having a job because you're in the lab doing research, and it is a job. So I think it gets easier because later on you can just focus on the research. You don't have to worry about the courses. I really recommend that you have to be self-disciplined. You cannot put things off. If you have a problem with being self-disciplined, you really need to set down a set time on when you're going to be in the lab. We try to tell students that it's not an 8 to 5 job. I don't expect my students to come in at 8 in the morning, but I expect them to produce. So if they roll in at 10 o'clock and decide they're going to stay till 9 o'clock at night, that's fine with me, but you can't come in at 9 o'clock and go home at noon. So some students are very good about getting a lot done, and time management is going to be up to you. How much time does it take for you to accomplish something? And some students do function better if they say, I'm going to get out of bed at 7:30, get in by 8, and go home at 5. So it's really, you have to have time management. But it's just a matter of, it's going to depend on the student on how you organize that. I think the biggest challenge is expecting results to come and be perfect. And when things don't work out, and they always don't work out, not getting frustrated. I think that's the biggest challenge. I think students come in and they, if you haven't had a research experience, you expect it to be like it is in a chemistry lab where you put things together and it all comes out because somebody set it out for you. We tell people that if we knew what the results were, this wouldn't be research. And so I find that a lot of students that the actual good results don't come until right at the end. And the key there is not to get frustrated with that, and quit. I have seen, just students giving up before they've actually got into their research. So they've gone through the classes and they don't like the classes. And so they decide, the PhD's not for me. And again, we try to tell them, that's not what PhDs are about. It's about the research. And so I have seen students that after that first year just not be motivated, and quit, before they actually get into the research. Spend some time in searching in the literature. A lot of students will come in and, if a faculty member, usually a faculty member will have some idea on what the student's going to work on and give them a project. But the faculty member doesn't know everything that's out there. And something that will trip students up is they get so far in their research and then they find out afterwards that it's already been done. And they go to try to publish this and they can't because it's already been done. It's real important from the start to read the literature, be familiar with what other people are doing. We always recommend that what you do is you start, a search on a subject, and then by that you'll see some different investigators who are working in this field, and then monthly you search for their name, you search for journals, that are publishing this stuff, just to keep up with what other people are doing. Don't give up, because it's usually the middle where you hit that point where you're going, okay, my data's not coming out the way it was supposed to, I'm not going to get finished, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's where students really get frustrated. So the point there is realize that everybody else is in that same boat. It's not just you. It's, research is gonna fail at times, and just not give up. Look for a job. Towards the end, you just want to make sure all those publications are in row, because that's going to be very important for you to get a job. Don't delay on publications. I've seen publications delayed because faculty members get busy, and so the advisors don't have the time to read them. Stay on your advisors, and I do that personally. I've been so busy that those are the things that you want to put on the back burner because there's no deadline. You've got to stay on your advisors' back and say, please read my publications because we need to get them submitted. So. No, I just, working on a PhD is fun. Again, it's frustrating and it can be very challenging, but it's probably the best thing that I've ever done, or I wouldn't be here in academia.